I'm focused on his spirit cause it keeps me from his fire. The Holy Ghost is with me, so my fear I leave behind. My sins were all diminished when he took that breath and died. And if you think I'ma give up on my God, the devil is a lie. The devil is a lie. The devil is a lie.
Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barnes. Today, we're going to be talking about some Christians who were doing praise and worship in Seattle, and Antifa and groups came out and were throwing piss at them and other things. And the mayor ended up coming out against them. So now they are protesting, them and conservative groups are protesting Seattle and the mayor and the city and the council and all those folks for their religious bigotry. And when people in masks show up and start disrupting and throwing pee and other things, I would think that they are the bad guys, but hey, that's just, I don't know, my inclination. I also want to talk about Trump's tariffs coming to a halt thanks to the courts. Well, some of them anyway. And he'll find other means to keep, I suppose, doing them, but some of his tariffs are coming to a halt. So we'll be chit-chatting about that a bit. And also I played a video for you guys yesterday of some people from Gaza who were very happy that America was providing aid and was saying thank you USA, thank you Trump. And apparently I guess some folks online were trying to say that they're fake and they investigated it and stuff, and like the national news ended up investigating if it was AI, and no, it wasn't AI. People are actually very grateful to have the help of the United States of America. So anyway, we'll be talking about those things and some more today. But before we jump into everything, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktunes.com/donate because it does cost a stream. Run my website, all the good stuff, so you guys can support it. I very much appreciate it and appreciate you guys. You guys can look at different merch that's available on the website. It's a way to support like different t-shirts and mugs and so on. So if you guys want to help out, that's a good way. But the best way is, if you want to just flat out support and leave a donation. You guys can also do super chats, or on Facebook, if you're watching, you guys can send stars. You guys can also check out some books that I've written, like Super Kid. That's a children's chapter books. And I got Super Kid 2. I also have books for older readers as well. I have 18 that are all together out. Soon to be 19 after I release Bigger. And that's a children's picture book that I'm, still working on compiling and stuff. So I'll keep you guys updated with that. But I'm very, very, very excited about all that stuff. My sister sent me a crazy video, by the way, that I just saw it on TikTok. I'm thinking about showing it to you guys because it's just so bizarre. Even if I explain it to you, it'll be so weird. But it's just so, I just can't believe somebody thought it was a good idea. So now I have to show it with you guys. I have to. Just bear with me. To brace yourself, it has to do with 9/11. I don't know who on God's green earth choreographed this. This just started. My sister sent it to me. Someone posted it 2 days ago on TikTok. This particular video has 5 million views. Usually when something like that has that many views, people start posting it. So I don't know if I'm going to start seeing copies of this video everywhere now that I've watched it, but I just tweeted it out. So if you guys want to share it with someone else, you can. But that's just the easiest way to for me to find it on TikTok. So you guys can see this. It's one of the wildest things I've seen. Hold on. I got it up. I just got to share my screen. I'm sorry. This is just kind of a fly moment decision. It's on my mind. It's on my mind. Okay, so this is a cheerleading group. I don't know if it's a competition or what. Let me refresh the page.
Victims were in airplanes or in their offices. Secretaries, businessmen and women, military and federal workers, moms and dads, friends and neighbors. Thousands of lives were suddenly ended by evil, despicable acts of terror. The pictures of airplanes flying into buildings, fires burning, huge structures collapsing, have filled us with disbelief, terrible sadness, and a quiet, unyielding anger. These acts of mass murder were intended to frighten our nation into chaos and retreat, but they have failed.
So, in case you don't know what you just watched, or you're still in a little bit of disbelief, which disbelief and cringed humor, I guess, is the response that I'm seeing from different comments. But someone made a cheer routine about September 11th, and they were acting it out, being the planes and doing back handsprings. I guess that was the Pentagon. And I just can't imagine an adult saying that was a good idea. I just can't. Um and to be like, we're going to perform this for everybody in the gymnasium. I don't know if it was a special ceremony. I don't know if it was, I'm assuming it's not a typical sports event. Hopefully it was not a competition. But that was flipping weird. I I'm sorry. I had to show it to you. I was just floored. Floored. I just, and usually there's more than one coach, and then there's like a captain and a coach, and it just seems like those sorts of things would need to be approved by like more than one person, and I just can't imagine so many ideas being bad that's what they decided. Anyway, speaking of bad decisions, um the mayor of Seattle um has ticked off a lot of Christians. This is from Fox 13 Seattle. A religious group is set to protest outside Seattle City Hall. Here's why. A group of evangelicals and conservatives are holding a rally at Seattle City Hall on Tuesday in response to comments made by Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell after a weekend protest at Cal Anderson Park escalated into a clash that resulted in 23 arrests. Sorry, don't know why that started playing sound. The Rattle in Seattle demonstration is slated to take place at 5 p.m. on the 4th Avenue steps of Seattle City Hall. Keep reading to learn more about why the protest, backstory, blah, blah, blah. The group behind Rattle in Seattle says they are protesting what they view as religious discrimination and undermining the First Amendment rights by Mayor Harrell. Their anger stems from the mayor's response to a May Day USA event that was met by counter protests and that led to multiple arrests. On May 27th at 5 p.m., evangelicals and conservatives are coming together from across the state of Washington to stand against the religious bigotry of Mayor Bruce Harrell and the Seattle City Council. In a show of force, hundreds will rally on the front steps of 4th Street of Seattle City Hall on Tuesday evening and demand both an apology and retraction from Bruce Harrell for his disgusting comments aimed at bringing harm to the faith community. If the mayor won't apologize, it's time for him to resign in disgrace. Following the May Day USA worship event in Cal Anderson Park on Saturday, the mayor had the audacity to issue a press release blaming Christians for the premeditated violence of Antifa, which resulted in the hospitalization of Seattle Police Department personnel and the arrest of 23 Antifa agitators. Under the mayor's leadership, the city of Seattle has continued to spiral into lawlessness and dysfunction, while the First Amendment rights of citizens to peacefully assemble has been disregarded. The mayor has aligned himself with the most extreme elements of Antifa and other radical groups while understaffing and undermining the Seattle Police Department and their mission to protect the residents of the Emerald City. And the mayor has lost both the ability and authority to lead the city of Seattle and must apologize and or resign immediately. Seattle deserves better than a radical leftist who tramples on the religious freedoms of citizens while providing cover for violent extremists to abuse the police officers, attack Christians, and destroy a city. Right on Seattle is being led by Russell Johnson, Jenny Donnelly, and Russ Johnston. Russell Johnson is the lead pastor of Pursuit, a multi-site church in the Pacific Northwest with campuses in Seattle and Kirkland and another city. Jenny Donnelly is the founder of Her Voice, MBMT leader in the U.S. branch Grassroots Don't Mess with Our Kids movement. And then Ross Johnson is the co-leader of the Mayday USA and has led outdoor worship gatherings across America. And the Mayday USA is an organization described on its website as a faith-based activist group that calls on Christians to speak out against abortion, child trafficking, and perceived moral decline of society. According to the group's website, they are protesting in 5 major cities across the U.S. to stand for our children, restore the family unit, and proclaim the gospel. Here, I guess, from the other side perspective, on Saturday, May 24th, Mayday USA held a demonstration at Cal Anderson Park. Counter-protesters arrived and tensions escalated into violence. The event was shut down early by Seattle police due to safety concerns. The community organizations and the activists took to Cal Anderson Park on Saturday to counter Mayday USA's event, which they call a well-funded anti-trans, anti-queer event that is led by far-right Christian activists. So obviously, these people are Christians who came and got a permit or whatever to protest, to pray, to worship, practice their faith and their free speech. And these leftist weirdos do stuff all the freaking time. You do not have to go and be disruptive. You can go and, engage. You can talk, because you'll see people on the right go to different like pride parades and marches and record stuff and ask people questions and do their man on the street videos. People on the left can do stuff like that, but they're throwing like balloons filled with piss at people. That is assault. They don't have the right to do that kind of stuff. So even if they don't like them and they say that they're anti-trans and anti-queer and far right, blah, 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 they don't have the right to do what they do. But, in Seattle, they've been nuts for a long time, and they let this lawlessness go on, and people don't fear authority because a lot of these people in authority are left-wing nut jobs, and they know that they can get away with a lot of this stuff. Organizers of the counter protest brought signs and banners to the picket line to demonstrate the following actions items listed in the press release ahead of the Mayday USA event: stop the war on trans and queer folk, empower youth to speak, define, and defend themselves, defend bodily autonomy and abortion rights, stand against the racist Christian identity movement, defeat Trump, Musk, and Project 2020. What did Elon Musk have to do with all this stuff? Which, by the way, Elon Musk is no longer like a volunteer government employee. I think you can only do that for like 130 days outside in a calendar year anyway, without having to like file certain paperwork. So some Democrats are like, oh, he finally got kicked to the curb. No, he just probably didn't want to have to file a bunch of paperwork and about his companies and conflict of interest reports and other things like that. So he probably wasn't going to become an official government employee. Why would he want to do that? Anyway, he's just all the time that he's volunteered to work on Doge is great. But he has a lot of other things on his mind and on his plate. So I can understand wanting him to get back to the real world. And he's sacrificed a lot to do what he's done for a little while, but people still making him the face of who they have to attack and fight it's kind of funny. What did the Seattle mayor Bruce Harrell say in response to the protest? And this is what he said. After the protest incident on May 24th, the mayor released a statement praising Seattle's tradition of standing up for values while urging nonviolence during the protest. He also called on the Parks Department to review the rally's permit, asking whether alternative locations or changes could have prevented the conflict. He said Seattle is proud of our reputation as a welcoming, inclusive city for LGBTQ plus communities, and we stand with our trans neighbors when they face bigotry and injustice. Today's far-right rally was held here for this very reason, to provoke a reaction by... Oh, I just heard about it. I hadn't read the statement. That's crazy. Today's far-right rally was held here for this very reason, to provoke a reaction by promoting beliefs that are inherently opposed to our city's values in the heart of Seattle's most prominent LGBTQ plus neighborhood. So they held a rally so people could throw piss at them. That's why they did that, to get a react. That is so crazy. That is so crazy. When the humanity of trans people and those who have been historically marginalized is questioned, we triumph by demonstrating our values through our words and peaceful protests. We lose our voice when this is disrupted by violence, chaos, and confusion. Anarchists infiltrated the counter-protesters group and inspired violence, prompting the SPD to make arrests and ask organizers to shut down the event early, which they did. While there are broad First Amendment requirements around permitting events under free speech protections, I am directing the Parks Department to review all of the circumstances of this application to understand whether there were legal locations, alternatives, or other adjustments that could have been pursued. The police department will complete an after action report of this event, including understanding, preparation, crowd management tactics, and review of arrests and citations. I am grateful for those who make their voices heard in support of our neighbors without resorting to violence. In the face of an extreme right-wing national effort to attack our trans and LGBTQ plus communities, Seattle will continue to stand unwavering in our embrace of diversity, love for our neighbors, and commitment to justice and fairness. So even if you did want to stand with and protect the LGBTQ plus hashtag backslash signs, whatever group, you could at least still voice that you support the religious liberty of people to speak out and what they believe as well. But they only support one side. Organizers of Rattle in Seattle say the mayor's remarks wrongly suggested the Christians were to blame for the violence and claim that the permit review signals government overreach. They argue this is an example of religious bias and says that the mayor was failing to protect peaceful assembly rights. Regarding the mayor's call to review the May Day USA event, he said that the far-right rally was intentionally held at Cal Anderson Park, Seattle's most prominent LGBTQ plus neighborhood, to provoke a reaction. That doesn't... Maybe they're in that area because they're praying for those people. Doesn't mean they're inviting people to do violence to them. That's insane. That's insane. You don't excuse the crazy reactions. And the city did officially approve the permit. They did arrest 23 people. Court documents say Seattle police officers at Cal Anderson Park protests had water bottles thrown at them. They were also spit on, punched in the face. One officer may have broken their pinky finger. Ugh. The Seattle mayor and the Seattle Police Officers Guild are questioning the decision to grant May Day USA's rally permit. We have no doubt that the city decision, as naive or deliberate as it was, put the police officers in an untenable predicament. The SPOG announced in a part of a press release, whether it's our job or not, we were once again ordered to put ourselves into political quagmire SPOG understands we will once again get blamed and more cause will be heard for more accountability. This is Seattle's public safety political reality. This place is just a hot mess, bro. I'm a really big fan of Frasier. I saw Frasier before Cheers. Cheers was like a bit before my time. And I loved Frasier. And I did watch all of Cheers a few years ago, like on Netflix. And then they not revised, but brought Frasier back on Peacock. No, it's Paramount. It's Paramount. But they did cancel it. There were 2 seasons and they went ahead and canceled on Paramount. I think they were trying to see if they could find another home for it. I don't know if they will or they won't. I do like what they've done with the show, but if they wanted to continue the show in Seattle, they easily could have continued the show in Seattle. And Frasier's dad, Marty, was more, Frasier and Niles, they're, pretentious, liberals. And their dad was a cop and he was, more traditional, conservative, etc. Though nobody was like overtly religious or anything like that, but he had kind of more traditional kind of sentiments and tough on crime. And one of the funniest episodes they had was this they were trying to help this guy who was running as a Democrat for office, and he was crazy and believed he was abducted by aliens. It's such a funny episode. But if they wanted to do an episode in Seattle, I mean, or bring it back to Seattle, because Marty had passed away, and it could just be kind of like Frasier. He had like these liberal sentiments, and now just getting older and seeing how crazy the left was. He'd kind of be like the one taking, even though he'd still be very pretentious and like his finer things, he could still like be swaying more in a conservative direction just because of how crazy the city had gotten. And there'd be lots of interesting callers, lots of interesting things in the background, and he would kind of seem like a man out of time fighting with all this weirdness in the city. I mean, if you think about episodes they had before in the past, like there was someone there's this coffee shop him and his friends would go to all the time, and one time they had someone come in who was just playing the guitar, and he flipped out about it. He didn't like it, and other people liked it, so he tried to find other coffee shops, and it just, they don't like change. So that would have been an interesting direction to go. But they ended up going back to Boston, where Cheers took place. So, I and he like reconnected with his son, and so those stories are fine. They went in a fine direction. But Kelsey Grammer, who plays Frasier, he is a Republican and he is like more conservative and stuff. So that would have been an interesting route to take it, but definitely a lot of material when it comes to Seattle, the madness that goes on there. So I'm going to play a couple different clips and interviews and stuff from those incidents. Laura Ingraham had invited a pastor on to talk about it a bit. But God bless these people though for going to the devil's territory, I suppose.
It was crazy. It started on Saturday with a worship event in Cal Anderson Park. And that event has, of course, been labeled by the media as some sort of anti-LGBT type rally, and it wasn't. That event offered free haircuts to kids, free bike giveaways, free groceries for the community, free prayer for people who were in need of it. And then
when I watched that interview initially, I'm like, when is prayer not free? Like, I know he's just like listing things, but I'm like, that prayer ought to always be free. But anyway.
And it also incorporated a worship element at the end of that outreach. And that was when we were swarmed by hundreds of Antifa militants. And I'll only correct one thing in the reporting of your story. They weren't throwing water balloons. They were throwing water balloons filled with urine at Christians who stood in the park and were assaulted for the high crime of worshiping Jesus in a public space. So that happened on Saturday, and then the mayor followed it up. An hour after that event ended, police officers were hospitalized, good church people were injured. He followed that up with a press statement blaming the church for the violence and saying that we are advocating values that are antithetical to Seattle's values. It was crazy. It started on
Sorry,
Saturday.
I didn't mean to play that again. So yeah, we went through the statement, and that appeared to be the case. And they were saying that they went there to provoke stuff. I mean, I guess at least he acknowledged Antifa. The left used to be so just ignore those folks or even promote them. Keith Ellison, who is believe he's still the Attorney General of Minnesota, but he used to be the co-chair of the DNC, and he, has this picture that's pretty famous on the internet, I guess, of him uplifting an Antifa book. And I think even Don Lemon was talking about Antifa, and they're like, they're anti-fascist, like that's their name. Like, just because someone's name is anti-fascist doesn't mean that they're not fascist. It doesn't mean that they're not violent and trying to shut down free speech and all sorts of, things that we are entitled to that they just don't like. And so there are videos like this going around of a woman like with her baby and these people just surrounding her. Yeah, so all kinds of crazy stuff going on. I would just need the grace of God if there was a situation and people were throwing stuff at me. Like, I don't know. I know as an adult you can't just be fighting people because like you got to go to jail or whatever. But though if someone threw something at you, that would be them starting the assault, and I guess you could retaliate. But how these courts are, you just you got to just take some stuff, and sometimes you want to go by playground rules, I guess, because I would just need the grace of God. I need the Holy Spirit to arrest me and be like, be cool. But they went there and they were praying and they were worshiping and they had a good time. I'm not ashamed. I thank the Master. I thank the Savior. I thank God. Get up out of that grave. Yeah, that's they play that song on Caleb all the time, so I'm familiar with it. My oh my, these places. These really, really left-wing places. I saw an article about Colorado and how a lot of their major cities are not taking in the sort of revenue that they need to. And people are just like, bro, everything smells like weed. You're not doing enough with your crime. People don't feel safe. People don't want to come. Like, beautiful mountains and all this other stuff. I have some family that moved out to Colorado for work. and stuff. There's cool things to do if you're like the outdoorsy nature type or whatever. I mean, there's stuff to do everywhere you go, but I then they compare Colorado to Florida, and they're just like, Florida has all this stuff and it doesn't smell like weed everywhere, unlike Colorado. I hate it in Michigan. I can only imagine how bad it is in Colorado. Like, it doesn't smell like weed everywhere you go in Michigan, but sometimes you could literally just be driving. Okay, you could just be driving, and someone drives by you, and your windows are up. And their windows don't even got to be down. But then that smell just gets you, and it permeates within your own car, and you just have to sit with it for a while until it just eventually dissipates. But it's so strong. You go to the grocery store, and like, especially like late at night, and people walk by you, and it's just like a puff of skunk blast. I don't understand it. But if I could put it on a ballot to just arrest people for the smell, I will probably do that. I hate it, man. I hate it. Gosh. So I can only imagine what's, I know some people going out to that way and out west soon, and I'll just have to ask how their experience is, because I know I hate the weed stuff here. And in Florida, there's groups that, I mean, they defeated it last time, during the election. There was a ballot initiative, and Ron DeSantis really, really fought hard to strike it down. And he's like, if you guys want to try to put it through the legislature, go ahead and try to do it through the legislature. I mean, he probably will strike it down or whatever, but he's like, it's better for that stuff to be regulated that way, rather than saying you have a constitutional right to go and use that stuff everywhere. Like, that's not what these changing the constitution and stuff ought to be for, and then if people can freely just do it everywhere, just think about being at the beach with your kids, and all of a sudden, puff of gross skunk blast comes out of nowhere. I know a lot of people do the weed and they like how chill it feels, and want to feel calm and buzzed or whatever the heck it is. But man, that smell is crazy. Someone said that their very conservative son is being stationed in Oregon, and you're heartbroken. Oh, because closest city is Portland. Ugh. Yeah. Isn't it so crazy to think about how things were? I mean, things are still like bad in certain places and areas or whatever, but how bad it was in 2020. Not just like with the COVID, but the BLM riots and Antifa, and the rise of all that stuff, and how prevalent it was, and how different mayors and governors were just turning a blind eye toward it. And I assume turning a blind eye toward it, not just because maybe they're ideologically aligned or sympathetic to some of these people, like I mentioned Keith Ellison and his little Antifa book, but also because the constant feeling of chaos in America in 2020 obviously helped to dethrone Donald Trump in that election. And some people out there were like, no, he won, they stole it. You can, I don't argue that today, but that constant feeling of panic and dread from the pandemic. I mean, that's one of the reasons why the Democrats fought so hard to not have a vaccine out prior to the election. That's why Kamala Harris said, I'm not taking Donald Trump's vaccine. That's what she said. And then this very same vaccine, when she was vice president, she's like, okay, make sure you guys take this or you're not gonna be able to work. But they were instilling vaccine hesitancy, and they didn't want things approved. They were claiming that he was doing it too fast, and they wanted the schools closed down. Pete Buttigieg was going around talking about like, oh, it was a mistake to keep the schools closed. In hindsight, let me see if I can I got that clip real quick because he's I don't know what they're trying to do at Pete. I don't know what they're trying to do at Pete. I hope he's not. I think if he was gonna, because he lives in Michigan now, and I would think the mayor race is like not the mayor race. The governor race is getting pretty crowded. I would think he would have announced by now for that, or if he wanted to do Senate, but he's to me it would be bonkers if he tried to run in 2028. I don't know what this man is up to, but he's doing a lot of press and going a lot of different places. But he was asked about 2020, and he mentioned I think this is a clip about the schools, closing the schools.
We are going to go back to like right after Biden gets the nomination in 2020. So, you just endorsed him, and you're Pete from today, and you get to talk to Pete from back then. What do you think y'all should have done differently?
One, for the love of God, figure out a way to get the schools open sooner. We got very knee-jerk about this, and the costs were not just politically, but in a profound way. I think for the generation, the costs were profound, and I think anybody who was involved, who was, by the way, obviously doing their best to deal with a crisis that killed a million Americans.
Sure.
But I think most people involved would like to be able to have found a way to safely get more schools open more quickly.
That was a great first answer. I had no idea where there's so many ways you could have gone with that. But
obviously, pay more attention to the border. That's real, and that's going to be something that you can't just like take your time to deal with. Three, even though you spent your entire political lifetime believing that the economy and jobs are the same thing, and if you have lots of jobs, it's a good economy, and if you have a problem with jobs, it's a bad economy. Remember that prices is just as big a part of the economy. It just hasn't come up much in the last 40 years.
So what would you have done? What would you have done differently on prices then?
No country was able to save their economy from COVID without getting into some inflation, some serious and painful inflation. But I do think that there were a lot of moments where people kind of waved it away in the first year or two, even just like the conversation about it, the focus. It is true that we had no choice but to bring back the economy by any means necessary. I mean, we forget how grave the threat of a depression was in 2020 or 2021. I mean, when I came in, I spent a big part of my time as secretary dealing with getting airlines to treat their passengers better. You could almost forget that the entire first year, our biggest focus was making sure airlines didn't go out of business. And that's just to use the airline sector as an example, right? So again, by definition, you set up this exercise. It's easy to say now, but like, since it is, those are the things I'd be whispering into my 2020 year if I had the chance.
Okay, so this is some of the stuff that he's saying. This is the Bulwark that he was doing an interview with. The Bulwark is Bill Kristol's organization. Bill Kristol used to be like a big conservative, and he just has TDS, and so he's just flipped on a lot of his different positions. It doesn't claim like basically much of any conservative values, so he can still keep propping up that audience that he's had for the past couple of years with TDS. It's really insane. But here's a flashback to some stuff that Pete Buttigieg said. To this president and to the Secretary of Education, school is just childcare, Buttigieg told Worldland. It is a way to get the economy back on track, open up the doors so you have a place to put your kids so you can go back to work. School is not just childcare, explained. There are many other things that need to take place in order to have proper educational environment. Many of his friends who are young educators are writing wills because they are terrified that they are going to get sick, Buttigieg continued. There's already a flight risk of teachers fleeing the profession. I don't want to see teachers leaving the profession on gurneys. He said teachers were writing wills and he didn't want to see them leaving the profession on gurneys. So, everybody knows now that closing down the schools was a very stupid thing to do, especially for as long as it went on. And in Michigan, by the way, it went on for a long time, and our governor tried to pretend like that wasn't the case when she was getting reelected, and for some reason we reelected her by double digits. But I mean, I know our side kind of fumbled back with some stuff, but it's still amazing that she won by double digits. Especially with all that we went through and how long they kept stuff closed down. But Randy Whitegarden, who's like a head of teachers unions, she's going around pretending like she wanted schools open sooner than what she did when she was one of the main people talking about keeping them closed. Of course, Donald Trump is part of like the country being shut down, and they make recommendations. And when some Republican states wanted to open up faster, he was telling them to slow down because people were breathing down his neck, and he didn't want the press attacking him. So he didn't handle everything perfectly anyway. But one way that they were attacking him in 2020 is that they were running ads complaining about how he wanted to open schools. So it's very easy. I mean, the question was, what would you do differently in 2020? And he said it. And it's easy to say stuff in hindsight, but you know what? I was always right. So I was always right. I was always right. It was always my opinion that if you slow the spread, aren't you like, prolonging the disease, prolonging the pandemic? Like, that didn't sound right to me. And it just always made sense, especially when we knew that it affected you. Like if you had the comorbidities, if you respiratory issues, or if you're very, very obese, or if you're an upper age, when you're like above 50, but really it's taking out people who are, like 80, 90, etc., etc. And those people are important. And those people you want to protect. So we do everything that we can to protect those people while other people keep trying to keep the economy going. Like he talked about the economy and those sort of struggles and prices and inflation and so on. We didn't have to shut down everything. Those were choices. And the whole world decided to shut down. Supply chains got messed up. We spent an ungodly amount of money because we shut down everything and we wanted to keep some money in people's pockets. But they were picking and choosing which people were essential, who wasn't essential. And then some people lost their businesses. Like, can you imagine being a flower shop and not being able to be open during Mother's Day and Valentine's Day? Just, we did so many crazy things. And we had the dumbest rules all over the country, very much so in Michigan. Like my sister was so annoyed with things that weren't essential, and things were like roped off, like paint thinner. She's like, I'm a painter. It's essential for me because that's how I make my money. Just really absurd things in 2020. So I don't know what Pete is up to. I don't know what his purpose is going on all these podcasts. He did a Jubilee episode some months back. I didn't watch it. But he keeps putting himself out there, and I don't know what is the goal for his political aspirations. I mean, it could just be for like eyes on him, podcasting to do some kind of fame money thing, but I don't know. I assume it's for political aspirations. I hope it has nothing to do with anything here in Michigan. Because I don't want him to be governor. I don't want to be my senator. I just want him to go somewhere. He was so annoying to me in 2020 in the primaries, and people would pretend like, oh, Pete is so well spoken, and Pete is he's more moderate than everybody, and he wasn't. He wasn't. And I guess he talked less crazy than a lot of other people, but he was just really dishonest though with his different rhetoric. Like I have a video based off of some comments that he made, because he said that Democrats they're very much in their faith, but they don't talk about it basically so because they respect all faiths. And I'm like, that's not what it is. So, and I did a video like, Is it because they respect everybody's faith and they're so inclusive, or is it because of religious bigotry? And I started showing different examples of like Bernie Sanders when he was going after and attacking Russell Vought because of his different opinions on faith, like the centrality of Jesus Christ, which is duh if you're a Christian. And he's like, but you don't believe Muslims know God, or he's a Christian. He believes in the Christian edict. They don't believe Jesus is God. They don't think we're going to heaven if we think that. There's disagreement there. So why are you all up on his case? And then he said, I'm going to go ahead and vote no because of the things that you said. That's religious bigotry, bro. You're trying to do some kind of religious test? Like, that's exactly what you're not supposed to do. And Cory Booker grilling a bunch of Trump folks, asking if they did gay weddings. And I'm like, bro, when you go to churches to campaign, do you harp on the people in the pews because they believe in the marriage defined in the Bible? I don't think so, but you want their vote. You want their donations. So you just act a fool when someone is going through a Senate confirmation hearing for something and there's no allegations at all that they've been bigoted toward LGBT people, but you just want to ask them about how many gay weddings they performed. Like, really, really crazy stuff. So I'm not a fan of Pete. I'm not a fan of Pete. Never was a fan of Pete. And I had no intention of going on a Pete Buttigieg rant, but I really, really hope he does not have higher political aspirations in my state. I hope those dreams are dead. I hope they're dead. I really hope they're dead. And I also had Ocasio-Cortez in that video too, but I recommend, maybe I'll have to repost it on TikTok or something, but it's on YouTube somewhere. Someone said the teachers unions made sure that they didn't open because they didn't want to go back. Yeah, they didn't want to go back, and they kept demanding more money and money and money. So that was such a ridiculous time. Like, I had a so one of my church members had passed away that year from cancer, and it was the family kept it to the tight, close to the chest. So I did not know what was going on until like the night before she passed. So it was a gut punch to a lot of us. And I mean, I guess if we had known for a long time, it would be a gut punch, but it was just, oh my gosh. This is someone I have known since I was a child. But she had 2 young daughters herself, and it just tore me up inside that after everything that they had to go through that year, that they couldn't be with their friends in school, on top of everything, knowing that the children were basically safe from it. And what were their excuses when the vaccine was readily available? And all the stupid things we had to do with the masking. You had to wear the mask before you sat down at the table, and you could take it off when you're at the table. I was thinking about this earlier about I don't think people appreciate how ridiculous of a time that was. Because I've been thinking about it, because I think about the abortion issue a lot, and so many people are like, we got to respect bodily autonomy. That's the most important thing. And I'm like, you guys are liars. And none of you respected bodily autonomy then. It was, you have to do this or you're going to kill grandma. But it went so beyond, like, you're going to kill grandma. I mean, there were people who couldn't get organ donations because they wouldn't take the vaccine. There were people saying that if you have some kind of medical emergency, that you shouldn't be able to be seen at the hospital if you don't have the COVID vaccine. They wanted you to just die. because you didn't get the jab. I'm not just saying like if you caught COVID later and wanted to be seen, they just something else. They thought you shouldn't be taken care of. It we lived in a terrible time. People were so terrible. They're just like, oh, we'll just forget about it, or oh, just forgive everybody. Like, what did you learn? What did you learn? and then we had to just go on and just pretend like people cared about bodily autonomy after that. It's so bizarre. Someone said liberals got so much worse after the pandemic. In so many different ways, but that was just the height of insanity. By the way, speaking of height of insanity, you guys know that shooter who killed 2 Israelis in DC. I think that was last week. There's a group called DSA Liberation Caucus, and they had put out or had posted a statement. So there's some groups calling to free Elias Rodriguez. Like, we know he shot them, like, and murdered them. By the way, he carried his gun on the plane. I mean, you can check a gun in, I guess, but people are like, what the heck? I mean, it's not like it was I happened to be in town spur of the moment. Like, he intended to do this crazy stuff because he's from Chicago. Not even like a Palestinian guy. But they posted this statement. They said, excellent statement that we are proud to add our name to free Elias Rodriguez and all political prisoners. So they added their name to this. The Palestinian struggle is a tip of the spear against global imperialism. Imperialism has made the entire world its battlefield. It is justified to fight it. They murdered 2 people in cold blood, a young couple who were about to get engaged in Israel, had their whole lives ahead of them. And they're justifying it and want this man freed. Like, that's what's going on here. You have to fight it by any means necessary without regard for geography. So this is globalized the intifada right here. This holds especially true for those of us struggling behind enemy lines inside the U.S., an entity that is an equal party in all crimes committed by the Zionists. Whether in the besieged Gaza Strip, the Red Sea, the South Lebanon, or the heart of the U.S., there must be consequences for genocidal Zionist imperialism, and those consequences are righteous. They talk about the murder of those 2 people. And by the way, Ocasio-Cortez, the congresswoman, did a mass call for this group on her YouTube channel not too long ago. So this is a pretty radical group for people who you're thinking AOC grew up and, you know, you're considering her for 2028 and Bernie Sanders grooming her, and they're going across the country giving their little speeches. And she's like, oh, Republicans support me too. Like, she still has these crazy associations. And she came out, you know, and condemned the stuff. I mean, the shooting. I mean, what else are you going to say if you're a congresswoman? But she still contributes to the rhetoric and the hatred and the atmosphere that facilitate that. Again, the murderer is the one who's responsible for his actions. But I don't think it's good enough to just say you condemn anti-Semitism when you still spew a lot of nonsense that attributes to the crazy. Someone said AOC would be the easiest competition. It would really depend on a lot of different things. It would depend on the climate of the country. I don't want to. I would like to think she'd be the easiest competition. I mean, there's a lot of people who are really, really pro Bernie Sanders and was like, "Oh my gosh, if only he was a nominee and he would have won." And there are reasons why there are people who liked Bernie who also like Trump because I mean they both are into some protectionist sort of economic policies or whatever. But there's a lot of obvious things that are different between them, and people don't understand how much opposition research there was available for Bernie Sanders to just dump in for like a presidential race. I mean, you hear people talking about like, oh, he's like a commie and other stuff like that, but there's a lot of stuff beyond that. And just like Kamala Harris, she tried to pull a fast one over on people and get in really quick. Like the first, like it was 100 and some change days that she ran for president. And the first 40 days, she wasn't taking interviews. So crazy. But Trump got together a banger as far as the LGBT like trans ads and started airing those a lot. And there was just a lot of content to use against Kamala Harris. And she has a really, 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 really radical background. And so does Bernie, and so does AOC. And I think in some regards she's trying to clean up and play things a little smarter than maybe she was when she first got in. But she is charismatic, you know. And there are things that she does. She's not wise, but she's not as stupid as people make her out to be. And she has again, she's not wise, but there's some instincts about her that are good, I think. So I think it's really easy to take her down, but at the same time, it's also going to depend on the Republicans and the climate of the country and whether we're in a good spot or not. Like, if people don't see enough of a contrast between the right and the left, or conservatives and Democrats, and Republicans are pushing things that don't solve problems, and people don't feel the country is better, they might want a big change, you know? And they might have their version of let's blow up the system, similar to when people elected Donald Trump. You know, Trump for a lot of people was a let's blow up the system and let's see what we get. So a lot of things depend on who they're running against. Someone's Tucker Carlson versus AOC 2020 would be iconic. That would be a crazy race. AOC on the debate stage saying something and Tucker face nonstop on the split screen looking confused. I don't know. I think I don't know, there's so much life will happen between then. Politics is such a fast moving machine. I think a lot of people would think the heir apparent to the whole MAGA movement would be someone like JD Vance. I think the kind of number one star player in the Trump administration right now to a lot of folks is Marco Rubio. And I think I mean, he's like firing off on all cylinders right now in a way that he just wasn't as a presidential candidate or even as a surrogate. Even as a surrogate for the Trump campaign when he was trying to be like the vice presidential pick. Because I'm like, JD Vance is so much better at speaking than Rubio, and he's just killing it in these interviews. And but I think Rubio has, I don't know, he's just found a footing that he hasn't had before. So and he's wearing a lot of hats, and a lot of people have a lot of trust in him. He got basically, you know, total bipartisan support, I think, when he was confirmed. So I don't know. Rubio could try to run again and maybe have a more successful time. I don't know what DeSantis might want to do during that time. You know, I do like Ron DeSantis. I don't know. So Donald Trump Jr. was asked if he would run, and he kind of like entertained the idea. I don't think he's gonna be able to kind of capture the same shine and sparkle of his dad, and Trump's like anointing for like the next person or his different candidates. It just doesn't transfer. People go out for him. They don't necessarily go out and vote a way because he said to vote a certain way. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So I think I don't think MAGA will be MAGA by 2028. Too much stuff kind of happens between that time. We're gonna things will probably look a lot different on the world stage, internationally and fiscally, and there's probably going to be a different sort of momentum to sort of ride and a new coalition to build, because I don't think you can just kind of hand off a coalition to someone like Obama. Like, couldn't just, the coalition that he built for himself and the Democrat, like, that's destroyed. They don't even know how to talk to men. They are so confused on what to do with the Democrat Party. So you have to build your own movement. So I don't think there will be an heir apparent. I think you have to build up from the ground up to have people support you. So I don't think Trump there's going to be an heir to the MAGA movement. I don't think the MAGA movement's going to probably maybe even be around too much after Trump has served out all that he can, and kind of goes off to play golf in the sunset. So a lot of Trump voters for Obama. A lot of Trump voters voted for a ton of different people, but yeah, Obama, yeah. Bernie in the primary, it just depends what people voted for him for. Speaking of Trump, his tariffs did get shot down. Not all of his tariffs, but the emergency powers that he was using to do like his Liberation Day stuff, that got shot down in the courts. They ruled that he didn't have the authority to impose the sweeping tariffs on virtually every nation, avoiding the levies that have sparked a global trade war. So he still has the power to do it within certain industries like steel and so on. So some of them are going to stay in place, but I'm sure he'll fight that. I am not so pro tariff. I don't like a lot of the sweeping stuff. I don't like, a lot of his deficit talks, because it just kind of seems like he doesn't quite know what he's talking about. But I've gone through all that sort of before, and I don't want to go. We're already over an hour now, so I'm sure they'll pursue other sort of avenues. But you have people like Rand Paul, and obviously a lot of Democrats who are trying to stop a lot of these sweeping tariffs. But in the case of Rand Paul, he's like, taxes are tariffs. Tariffs are taxes. They do raise prices. This isn't something that the president should be operating with emergency powers. And I guess just ask the question, do you want the left to use the same sort of tactics that the right are using to do just kind of sweeping policies that can have such an impact on in the economy? And I would say no. So I do want certain things reined in. I do. But I don't think he's probably going to be successful in the courts in this degree. But But I'm sure he'll try. Trying to see if there's anything else I wanted to cover before I let you guys go today. Man, that Pete Buttigieg stuff just got me kind of derailed. But it's okay. It's okay. No, I think we're gonna call it a day for now. Thank you guys for joining me today. Please go to blacktunes.com, check out different content on the website, articles, videos. Oh, Anna said that she likes tariffs. It's leverage. It depends how he uses them. But the broad Liberation Day stuff, I mean, we've talked about that before. Like, some people who had already said that they didn't have tariffs, people who virtually have no tariffs on the USA, that he still wanted to do tariffs at the time because of the deficit. But just because there's a trade deficit doesn't mean that someone is scamming us. It just means that, like you have a deficit with your grocery store, you go and you buy things, but you don't sell anything to the grocery store, but you get things that you need, and you have this voluntary relationship. So there's going to be situations when we can buy more from countries than they can buy from us because we have a lot of people and we have a larger economy to do that. So there's going to be some deficits, but that doesn't mean that someone is ripping us off. So just because it's a deficit doesn't mean something bad is happening. So when Trump talks about us getting ripped off for years and years, some of it is like intellectual property and other stuff like that. But sometimes it's just, he's talking about the deficits. He just doesn't think the deficits are fair. So, I do want to braid them a bit. I do think you can use them for leverage. You can use them for maybe national security reasons with China and other stuff like that. But there just needs to be kind of, it doesn't need to be as broad as he was doing on Liberation Day. More strategic. Okay, as long as we're bringing the victories. But I don't think he's gonna be able to probably use his power to do the broad stuff anymore. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me today. And I know I got interrupted, or I interrupted myself with my closing, but you go to the website, check out different articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do, you guys can leave a donation on the site. You guys can also check out different merchandise and different books that's available. There's a link in the description. It'll take you to Amazon page where you can see things like Slay Your Fear, How to Overcome a Spirit of Fear. That's one of my nonfiction books. That's a faith book. I did actually write that inspired by COVID because people had lost their minds. It's not about COVID, but I'm just like, these people are insane. Chill out. You are becoming evil because you are so filled with fear. And I have, of course, God is Blatantly Against Abortion. That's also one of my nonfiction books that is available. You guys can check that out. And I have, other books that are not nonfiction. I have 18 altogether, soon to be 19. I'm very excited. I was trying to think about where I might want to have a book signing for bigger, but we shall figure that out later. God bless you guys, and I'll see you next time.